and welcome back to the most amazing channel on the internet. I'm your host Rebecca Felgate, and today we are talking about the top 10 scary road trip stories. Now, I love a good road trip. The best I've ever taken was probably from Tucson, Arizona to San Francisco, stopping at the Grand Canyon, Vegas, and Venice Beach in between. The scariest thing I saw on that trip was probably just a tumbleweed, but for the people in the stories on this list, things got a little more terrifying. Before we get into the list, why don't you let me know your ideal road trip jaunt in the comment section down below. Coming in at number 10, we have this story of the delivery man. Of course, this creepy story happened around Death Valley, a hot and sparse desert in East California. This story comes from a Reddit user who shares an experience their parents had around 20 years ago. They said that their parents were planning on a weekend trip to a hotel around 30 minutes outside of Death Valley town, right in the middle of the desert. When they got to the place they were staying in, it looked totally abandoned. The dad got out of the car to look around and the mum stayed inside. Out of nowhere, a guy holding a bunch of newspapers turned up and started approaching the mum, whose window in the car was open. He said that his motorbike had broken down and that he delivered papers to Death Valley town. If he didn't get them there, he would lose his job. The mum couldn't see the motorbike and had a very bad feeling about the guy. Now, the guy begged her to let him in the car and she refused. Eventually, the dad came back around the corner and the paper delivery guy looked panicked. He dropped his papers and ran off into the desert. When the mum and dad went to check into the hotel, the receptionist told them that actually they don't get newspapers delivered to the hotel at all. When they checked the newspapers, they dated back to 1954. Now, I'm wondering, was he a murderer or a local ghost? Coming into number 9, we have the Norwegian mountain menace. This story was posted by Tonbury King on Reddit. They said that they and their buddy decided to go on a late night drive into the Norwegian mountains to watch the sunrise across the land, which sounds really nice. He said that the drive up the mountain was very enjoyable, and there's also a bar at the top. Although they knew it would be closed, they thought they could sit on the benches, have a little smoke, have a little chat, and just take in the view. On the way up, they saw a person sitting on a boulder. They only realised what they saw after they'd driven by, and as it was late and the roads can be a bit treacherous, they thought they'd reverse back and see if the person was okay. This is just classic Norwegian politeness, and good on them. Unfortunately, their act of kindness led to some serious spooks. They saw the person was a woman with a long white dress and long beautiful hair. She turned to look at them and they called out to her. I'm gonna read what the Redditor wrote here. Her face was 3 times the length of a normal person's face. Her eyes were completely blank and she had a smile on her face. Creepy. The Redditor also said that they were nearly paralyzed with fear, but they drove on anyway. The next day, both of the guys in the car contracted a high fever that lasted for days. Coincidence, or maybe not? Coming into number 8, we have the midnight scratching. So this story comes from a Reddit post around 4 years ago. It seems that a guy was driving back from a family reunion. He decided not to stay the night because he had to work the next day. After 45 minutes on the road, he said he felt a very big wave of tiredness come over him. He simply couldn't operate the car anymore, so he decided, you know what, I'm gonna have a nap. There was no lay-by or any place that he could park off the road, so he decided to drive into a field and park his car behind some trees. He then fell asleep at 11:20 but was woken up 30 minutes later by a scratching sound. He was really tired, he had a quick look at the clock and he decided just to ignore it, assuming it was probably an animal. He then went to sleep but was awoken by the same sound around 50 minutes later, and this time he was super freaked out. He thought actually maybe it wasn't animals, because why would they continually scratch for an hour? He looked into his rearview mirror and he saw someone or something running off into the forest. He decided to drive and head back to the road. He was done with this. As he drove forward, he saw an abandoned car with its doors open. Now he drove a little closer to investigate, and then a man came sprinting around the corner, yelling at him to get away from his car. The guy was pretty terrified and drove off. He said that the moral of the story was not to go sleeping at the side of deserted roads, and I've got to say, hear. Coming into number 7, we have the pickup trucks. This story was submitted to the subreddit Let's Not Meet. A girl and her friend Amy were driving from Redizo to Albuquerque. As the girls loved exploring, they took the NM55, a more remote road. They saw a white pickup truck ahead of them in the distance, and when they got closer, they saw that the truck turned across both lanes and then pulled over across the road. When they drove by, they noticed that the driver was a middle-aged guy who was staring at them very intently and talking into a walkie-talkie. When they passed him, he pulled back on the highway and started following them. They then noticed another pickup truck slowly coming towards them. Now this one was an older, more beat-up truck. When they passed it, they noticed that the guy was also talking into a walkie-talkie. The truck passed and then turned to follow them behind the white truck. The white truck then tried to bump them, but they kept on speeding faster. It then became apparent that the trucks were trying to get the car in between them. Now, luckily for the girls, a US Park Service car came off a little side road, and then both of the trucks U-turned. The girls were freaked out though, and they had no idea what the intention of the truck guys were. Coming into number 6, real life could be scarier than any movie. Apparently so. Now, this story comes from a road trip from 29 Palms, California to Albuquerque, New Mexico. The driver went through Amboy, a ghost town well below sea level and reportedly a location for satanic activity. The driver stopped by the Amboy sign to take pictures to show friends. As they drove forward through the deserted town and onwards through a canyon, they saw a red car stopped in the middle of the road. As they got closer, they saw a suitcase and 2 bodies lying face down. Feeling truly freaked out and uneasy, obviously the driver drove on, pulling out their 9mm pistol from under their seat because they really had a niggling feeling that it was a trap. I wouldn't stop. I mean, I would call the police later, but this is a lot. When they passed the scene, they then looked into the rearview mirror and they saw that the so-called bodies were getting up and around 20 people were emerging from long grass. The driver then hit the accelerator and motored forward. Now, they recalled their experience saying, "I will never know what would have happened to me if I'd gotten out of the car. Somehow, I don't think it would have been very good. Sometimes real life can be scarier than a movie." I agree. Honestly, sometimes my life is scarier than a scary movie. Coming into number 5, nothing good happens after 2 AM. I feel like this was an episode of How I Met Your Mother. Either way, sometimes I have to agree. A guy wrote a long and winding tale about a trip he took from Nashville to Kentucky and back again. He'd got into a fight with his girlfriend and he'd wanted to drive to blow off some steam. As he was headed to Alabama, he realized he was running low on gas, so he pulled off Interstate 65 and drove off the ramp near a gas station. This is when he noticed something very strange. The only other car on the road was stopped at a green light. It was after 3 AM and the guy driving figured it was weird, but might just have been because the other driver was tired. When the light turned red, the car rolled forward, pulled under the overpass and turned its lights off. The driver didn't want to go forward when the lights went green again, so they waited. When the lights went green a second time, they decided, you know what, they're just gonna move on, and the guy then started following him. When he got to the gas station, there was also a police officer. Now he thought, well, maybe I'm gonna be safe. That being said, the stalker also followed him into the gas station, parked and got into the lineup. After the road tripper paid, the stalker also left the line to follow him again. Now the driver said he sped through some red lights on his way home, and it's still the creepiest thing that's ever happened to him. So I visited the Golden Gate Bridge in December and it was really, really beautiful. That being said, I did have a scary time there, but that is a whole different story for a different day. At number 4, we have the story of the Bay Bridge. So San Francisco has a number of beautiful bridges, including the Bay Bridge and the famous Golden Gate Bridge. A man and his granddaughter were driving the epic route from San Diego to Portland, and they were stopping in San Francisco. They drove over the Bay Bridge and were struck by a diversion. The diversion led them into a district of a town with no streetlights and a very, very eerie vibe. The roads were deserted, but not just that, the streets seemed deserted too. A car drove by, but it was a Japanese model 1930s car. Eventually the detour took them over the Golden Gate Bridge, which was very dark with not even the toll booths open. The granddaughter, Kate, who was driving, started to go over the bridge, but she said she felt a force with her in the car trying to turn her around. Eventually, she managed to shake it off and drive forwards. And when she spoke to one of her friends who lived in San Francisco about the experience, they said that the Golden Gate is never dark, it's always lit up, and that area couldn't have been deserted as there was a festival on in town that day. Spooky. Okay, we've had loads of fun with Reddit here, but let's move on to some news-officiated real-life road trip stories that made national headlines. Coming into number 3, we have the murder of Peter Falconio. This story scares me so much as it is so simple and so easily replicated. On July 14th, 2001, Joanne Lees and her boyfriend Peter Falcono were driving on the Stewart Highway near Alice Springs in the Australian outback. Road tripping around, the couple in their 20s were enjoying a backpacking vacation in a VW camper van. As they were on the road, a driver in a Toyota 4-wheel drive flagged them down. He said he'd spotted that they had engine trouble and Peter got out to investigate while Joanne got into the driver's seat to rev the car. That is when she heard shots. She was terrified and then the man reappeared at her window holding a gun to her head. Now he managed to tie her hands behind her back with cable ties and was dragged into the back of a man's car. When he was distracted moving Peter's body, the girl then fled into the bush, fearing for her life and fearing she was going to be raped. She managed to successfully hide, and the man looked for her, passing close by, but he never found her. He later drove off with her boyfriend's body. Later, Joanne flagged down a road train driver who rescued her. Now the body of Peter Falconio has never been found, but the killer was later identified by DNA on Joanne. John Murdoch was found guilty and sentenced to 28 years in prison. So not all road trips are taken in cars. A lot of cyclists take road trips hitting the pavement with two wheels. Sometimes it can be the ultimate way to experience the open road. Unfortunately, what this cyclist discovered will haunt them forever. At number 2, we have the Annecy killings. The Al-Hilli family were on a holiday in France and taking a road trip through the Alps when they were shot in their red BMW. Parents Sad and Iqbal's mother were killed. The family's 2 daughters were wounded but luckily survived, although their 4-year-old was found hidden under her dead mother's legs 8 hours after police got to the scene. Next to the car, a French cyclist, Sylvain Mollier, was also shot dead. The scene was discovered by another cyclist, Brett Martin, who rode by the horrifying scene. While the murder investigation was opened, the perpetrator of the 2012 attack has not been found. Some investigators think that the murders were random, which is scarier because there could be a deranged killer waiting to strike again. Finally, coming into number 1, we have the Santa Rosa hitchhiker murders. I would never hitchhike, but probably only because of stories like this one. I get it though, it's a cheap way to take a road trip. In the 1970s, there were no real frame of reference as to how dangerous hitchhiking could be, but then the murders started happening. Between 1972 and 1973, 6 women were found dead and naked in rural areas near creeks next to roads. All of the bodies were of females. They were hitchhikers who were traveling around Sonoma County and Santa Rosa in California. The murders are still unsolved to this day. So guys, there we have it. That was the top 10 scary road trip stories. Which of these do you think was the scariest? Are you now terrified to go on a road trip? I still think it's fun, just maybe pack some pepper spray. Thank you guys for tuning into this video. I'm your host Rebecca Felgate. If you want to connect with me on social media, my link is in the description box down below. For now, please leave a thumbs up on this video, share it with a friend, and I will see you next time. Welcome back to the most amazing channel on the internet. I'm your host Rebecca Felgate, and today we're talking about the top 10 scary road trip stories part 2. You guys seem to be so into part 1, we are giving you a second helping. Now before we get into this list, do let me know where you would most like to go on a roadie. Right now, I'd love to drive the east coast of the United States and Canada. Do let me know that information in the comment section down below. Also, while you're down there, why don't you leave a thumbs up on this video and share it with a friend. Also, if you guys want to connect with me on social media, there's a link to my Instagram in the description box. Alright, coming in at number 10, we have the Huntsman. One Redditor described the scary moment they realized they weren't alone on their road trip, the moment they realized a killer was in the car and ready to strike. Responding to an Ask Reddit about the creepiest thing seen while driving, they wrote, "This is Australia. I drove about 3 hours at night from my father's rural property back into town, dark all the way. I made no stops and it was an uneventful trip, until I began to reach civilization at last, and in the faint illumination of motorway lights, I saw a large crumpled shape on the dashboard directly in front of me. It quickly resolved itself to be a huntsman spider sitting on the dash with front legs raised and looking straight at me. I hadn't opened the door in 3 hours. The thing had been in there with me for 3 hours. I was able to pull over soon at a service station and pump the car full of insecticide. I never found the body." Okay, this may not be a killer in the human sense or even a scary ghost, but a deadly spider riding along with me in assuming like a biting kind of position, scary fighting position, is pretty up there with one of the most terrifying things that could ever happen on the road. Coming in at number 9, we have We Are Family. In December 2004, 2014, Redditor Polar Bear Puppy posted this horrifying image with the caption, "I was driving down a woodsy back road in the mountains when I saw something out of the corner of my eye." I don't like the look of this, I'd be screaming for help. This honestly looks like a family of smiley woodland killers with cylinder heads. The picture received 4.1 thousand upvotes on Reddit and over 8,000 views on Imgur. People wrote some pretty fair comments on both of the social media sites too. On Imgur, someone wrote, "You stopped to take a picture and now you're dead," which probably is what happened, except they uploaded it. On Reddit, one viewer wrote, "My gut is saying it's a distraction. You should have been looking the opposite direction." I don't know what, yeah, maybe it's a decoy. The driver didn't seem to know the story behind the picture, but it can't be good. Honestly, looking at it gives me chills. Coming into number 8, we have the wedding dress. YouTube user Bill shared a scary story from a 1 a.m. car journey he was taking in March 2016. It seems he came across a woman wearing a wedding dress, her face covered with a veil, and she was walking very slowly along the side of the highway, holding flowers in her hand. Incredulous, the driver shot a video of the woman for Snapchat. He then uploaded it to YouTube. Apparently, the woman stayed silent and would not respond to offerings of help. Bill wasn't the only person who saw her either. It seems so did radio host Big Daddy Graham of Sports Radio 49 WIP. What a celeb. What the woman was doing at that time of night alone in a wedding dress, we don't know. Coming into number 7, we have Scotland's most haunted road. Yep, that's right, that is the A75 from Annan to Gretna Green. Shout out. One day I would love to drive from John O'Groats to Land's End. As we all know, it's one of the great British drives, that and clockwise to anti-clockwise around the M25. I would settle for the A75 though, it's a beaut, although it is a scary Scottish beaut. So many road trippers and truck drivers have reported seeing spectres in the road whilst driving. Famously, in 1957, a truck driver reported that he swerved to avoid a couple walking in the middle of the road. However, when he went to investigate, he found that they had miraculously vanished. Coming into number 6, we have Route 66 and the KKK. Back in the 1940s, there was no scarier stretch of road for black Americans than Route 66. While the 2,440-mile stretch of road is often romanticized in the American psyche, its road of dreams sentiment is not shared with many Americans of color who were persecuted as they tried to travel the stretch. 44 of the 89 counties that lined Route 66 in its earlier years were all white communities that banned black people after sundown. What happened if a black American found themselves in this community after sundown? Lynching. That's what. And of course, there were the pockets of KKK organizations. The Ozarks on Route 66, for example, were a popular lynching spot, and the KKK ran rallies near the road approaching Springfield. Like, seriously, what an awful blight on the world's history. Coming in at number 5, moving from Route 66, we have Route 666. What is this? It's a road that you may not want to travel down alone. Route 666, aka the Devil's Highway, is the 6th spur of Route 66. All those states that the road runs through, including Utah and Arizona, have renamed it Highway 191 as to avoid superstition. Nonetheless, the Devil's Highway remains, and it runs by several sacred Native American spots. Whether or not that's why the road is creepy remains to be seen, but there have been countless reports of spooky goings on since the road opened. One story comes from Linda Dunning, who said that while she was driving along the road with her husband on one evening, a flaming truck came careering towards them. They pulled over into the desert to let it pass. They were freaked out, but it just sped on off into the distance. The Dunnings aren't the only people to have reported the fiery vehicle either. Coming into number 4, we have a body in the car. In August 2017, a woman drove for 2 days with her dead daughter's body in the car before being involved in a car accident that blew her cover. 37-year-old Erica Newsom was driving with her dead 11-year-old daughter, Kaylee Plummer. Newsom drove into a guardrail in West Virginia and was seen dragging a body into the woods. When the woman was caught, she said that she was trying to drive her daughter from Jacksonville to Buffalo so her father could see her body. Creepy. The incident happened around 760 miles into her trip after Newsom had been driving with the body for 2 days. Western Virginian police said that it was clear that Plummer didn't die in the car crash and that her death was being treated as suspicious. Seriously, who drives for 2 days with a dead body next to them? Ugh. Coming into number 3, we have the Salt Creek abduction. In 2017, 2 girls appeared in a 60-minute interview on 9HD. 23-year-olds Lena and Beatrice were traveling in Australia and they wanted to go on a road trip from Adelaide to Melbourne. It's supposed to be one of the most amazing drives out there in Australia. The pair advertised for a driver on Gumtree, and when 61-year-old Roman Hines replied, they were very excited to get on their way. Little did they know that the man was a rapist and potential murderer. Soon after they started their journey, the man asked if they wanted to visit Salt Creek Beach to see kangaroos, and they said yes. Now this is where things took a dark and disgusting turn. Hines tied up and raped Beatrice, and when Lena tried to help her, he hit her over the head with a hammer. Eventually the girls managed to escape and found help in a local roadhouse. The police found Hines and he admitted to raping another backpacker in 2014. He's been sent to jail for 22 years. Now I guess it goes to show that you need to be super careful who you trust to drive you. I for one would never just trust a person that I'd not met off the internet to drive me somewhere. Coming in at number 2, we have the Highway of Tears in Canada. You need to know about the Highway of Tears because you may feel pretty differently when driving along the stretch if you knew its history. The Highway of Tears is a 720-kilometer stretch of road on Highway 16 between Prince George and Prince Rupert in BC, Canada. The route is surrounded by First Nations communities, and along the route a lot of people have disappeared or been found dead, most of which, although not all, are Indigenous women who have hitchhiked sections of the road. A number of killers have been known to strike along this road, including one of the world's youngest serial killers, Cody Legabokov. He killed 4 people in the area when he was just 20 years old. Serial killer Bobby Hack Fowler was also known to prowl the area. A lot of the cases of the missing or murdered females abducted whilst walking or hitchhiking in the area still haven't been solved. Okay, number 1 is disturbing, so warning for you guys. I don't know if you count getting a long-haul Greyhound bus as a road trip, but I do. Not everyone can drive, and getting around on a Greyhound or a megabus with a friend and spending hours on the road is sometimes a fun, if a little tiresome, way to travel on a budget. That being said, after hearing this story, I'm quite sure that I never want to go road tripping on a Greyhound ever again. Like, seriously, ever again. We have the murder of Tim McLean. Truly, one of the most horrifying road stories I've ever heard. In July 2008, 22-year-old Tim McLean was riding the Trans-Canada Highway from Edmonton to Winnipeg. As the bus stopped in Manitoba, Vince Weigang Lee boarded the bus. Then he later changed seats to sit right next to McLean. Don't you hate it when someone comes and sits right next to you on a bus when there's other spaces? Nonetheless, McLean decided to sleep, and as he slept, Lee slashed and stabbed him with a large knife. Now the bus driver pulled over and evacuated the other passengers on the trip. Lee was locked onto the bus and the driver couldn't get McLean's body. He was presumably dead by this point. Lee then decapitated his victim, proudly displaying his head to the passengers waiting outside the bus. He then began to cut off parts of McLean and eat them, again in front of passengers. So yeah, terrifying. Truly terrifying. So, deadly spiders, weird statues, ghosts, and cannibals. This list has kind of made me want to stay far away from road tripping for a while. Actually, do you know what? Scrap that. I know that these have been scary stories, but who am I kidding? I love a road trip. If there wasn't a little danger, maybe the sense of adventure wouldn't be so strong. Although I have to say, next time I go, I am packing pepper spray. Okay, before I exit this video, I just want to read some comments from part 1. You guys had loads to say, and I wish I could read all of the comments. G-Girl1 shared a story. She said, "One time when I was like 16, my family and I were on vacation in Missouri. We were driving down the highway when a car pulling a trailer with a forklift on it changed lanes and didn't make room for the trailer and almost knocked us off the road. Luckily, my dad saw it in time and pulled over to the side of the road. I don't think the driver even knew that they almost killed us. That was very scary." Do you know what? I have to agree. Honestly, sometimes real people and their stupid actions are a lot scarier than any ghost story. Zena said, "My city actually has a Route 666 with a murder somewhat connected to it." She said, "Look up Brianna Wood murder." Wait, is this the road 666 that we were talking about in this video? If so, have you seen the flaming van? Emerald said, Rebecca, I'm going on a road trip soon with my dad. Any tips? Plus I love your red dress. Thank you, you're very sweet. Cool that you're going on a road trip with your dad, that's so exciting. I totally recommend good car snacks and a great mixtape playlist, something of what you like and something of what he likes, and also just enjoy the time that you're getting to spend together. I wish that I could go on a road trip with my dad right now, honestly, this is so cool. Quick shout out to our channel sponsor, Super Tearaway Gamer as well, who left us a comment. Thank you to all of our channel sponsors and to each and every one of you guys for viewing these videos and making this all possible. I'm your host Rebecca Felgate. Don't forget to leave me a comment letting me know where you want to go on a road trip. Also, while you're down there, why don't you leave a thumbs up, share this video with a friend, and stay subscribed for more most amazing lists. Bye!